Hari Om, everybody. Warm welcome to all the Satsangis. Sorry for this slight delay as there was a technical glitch in sharing the screen. Let's begin with a prayer to the lineage and the Guru. Om Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Narayana Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam अंतर्ज्योतिः बहिर्ज्योतिः प्रत्यग्ज्योतिः परात्परा ज्योतिर्ज्योतिः स्वयं ज्योतिः आत्मज्योतिः शिवोऽस्म्यहम् गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. Om. As I was pondering upon talking, sharing some ideas in the satsang and some inspiration, I stumbled upon this topic, lost and found, while I was reading Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj's book, I Am That. So, as we begin this topic, elaborating, I would like to offer my gratitude and respects to the three great masters who inspire me a lot, and to all the masters, realized ones. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, who was a great inspiration for me, and Sri Narasimha Prabhuji, who is my guide and my mentor on the path of Advaita Vedanta, and also to Sri Ramana Maharshi, who is also a great inspiration for me, to all the masters in the lineage and all the realized ones. We misplace many things on a day-to-day basis, things that we lose every day. In fact, I misplace the keychain and spectacles very often, and my wife is the one who searches for it. Now, the thing is, if we lose them, it's very hard to find. Uh, Practically impossible to find, isn't it? Therefore, the key thing is we have misplaced these items. I'm sure you can come across many, many more list of items that we misplace in our experience, in our day-to-day experience. But these are suggested few things easily misplaceable, including mobile phones. Luckily for us, mobile phone has a chaser, has a tracker, the ringtone. So if we misplace it and somebody else calls from the phone, we will be able to know where we have kept it. So when we look at normal experiences in life, our transaction in the transactional world, we often are surrounded by so many things that we misplace a few things and forget them where we have placed. Especially, some of these mandatory documents, your degree certificates or our tax paid receipts or our sale deed for the property, they will all be very safe. but tucked deep inside the drawer or the attic or in the cupboard, so safe that there's going to be a pile of things over it, and it's very difficult to find them, especially at the time of immediate and urgent need, isn't it? Now, when we lose things so easily, practical things, then what is it now? Can I actually lose myself? Hmm? I lost myself. Is that possible? Hmm? I and myself, I have lost myself. Now, have I forgotten myself? Have I lost myself? Both of them. Who loses whom is the big question. And this is an interesting point to explore in the realm of spirituality. I will open up the mic for people who would like to share. Have we lost ourselves at any point of time?
In a new place, one can get lost without knowing the way.
In the new
And
place,
then
one.
you have to inquire. Sometimes I forget which hotel I am staying when I go on TD, and then it's a problem coming back.
Okay. Forgetting the way, losing oneself. Okay. Now, are there instances of losing oneself?
We see our friends, but we cannot remember their names.
We see our friends, but we can't remember their names. Okay. That is,
Friends or colleagues or old people,
huh. So it's
we
a
forget.
classic case of forgetfulness. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, BK. Thank you.
They,
So we see our friends, we can't remember their names. We go somewhere, but we get lost along the way if we can't remember. It's a classic case of forgetfulness. So many times we feel I have lost myself when I don't know what to do. Then that is because of the confusion in our own mind, isn't it? That is because of the confusion in our own mind. Now, I feel when I say I lost myself, I have lost myself, that means there are actually, the mind is looking for somebody who is familiar and can't remember. Now, with external objects and people, like all of us have expressed, many people have expressed, losing oneself is more a case of forgetfulness. We forget the way, we forget the name of the place, we forget names of people. Now, in the case of my own self, um, is it the case of forgetfulness, or is it a case of actually confusion? It may be looked at it in both ways, but essentially, when the mind is agitated and confused, what happens? Why do we forget things? We forget things where we have placed because there are too many things running in our mind. And our watch or our mobile phone is one of the many things that is running in our mind. Therefore, if we have to search for ourselves or the things around us, what is the first thing that is needed? A quiet mind to think clearly where I have placed where I have placed the object that I am searching for. Similarly, what Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj says very nicely here is all you need is a quiet mind. Live in tune with the things they are as they are, not as they are imagined. Now, the whole problem with oneself is because I am imagining myself to be something. I am imagining myself to be something, and therefore the original is not grasped. The real me is not grasped. Now, in this process, has the I or the consciousness or the awareness or the real me disappeared anywhere? That is a question that we have to ask. If it is right there, then why am I not able to find it? So, if the reason that I am not able to find my own self is that my mind is not clear and quiet, therefore unable to actually recognize my own true nature. Now, if we look at I and myself, we often come across two things that we see. I, I have lost myself, I love myself, I hate myself. The moment I make a statement, I like myself or I hate myself, what am I doing in the process? I'm splitting myself into two, me and myself. Whenever I split myself into two, then a set of opposites will strike. Sometimes I like myself, sometimes I hate myself. So there are two entities now, I and myself. Now, whose work is this split? Is the split real or is the split artificial? Now, we will see that we know by the definition, I or consciousness or awareness is at the substratum of everything. Brahman, God, I, awareness, Atman, witness, all of these are synonyms. Now, they are at the substratum of everything and every being. No being, no thing can be devoid of consciousness. It may not be expressed fully in certain objects. It may be expressed more in living beings, but it is there all the same. Therefore, it is a question of recognition of myself rather than finding myself. Now, the whole process of how do I lose myself is because there is somebody in between who has split one into two, me and myself. That's the problem. Now, when I spin myself, when my mind spins into me and myself too, then it spins a whole world around it. Now, where is the world? The world, let's then say I is the true consciousness, the real consciousness, and myself is this little person called Vasu. Now, the when the mind splits into me and myself, then the mind will spin the entire world on around the little self, and therefore, which is the world that we live in? Which is the world that we live in? The world that we live in is the world that is spun around me by the mind, by the mind of the little self. Now, whether it's the objective world or the world of feelings and emotions, it is still a spun world. Do we recognize this? Um, how is this an imaginative world? How does the mind project the world from its power of imagination? Now, which world do we live in? One may argue that the world in front of me, the objective world in front of me, is a fact. It's not a fancy imagination. I can touch and feel and sense that. Yes, facts are definitely real. Um, but in the objective reality of the world, the mind imagines a lot of things about the events and about the people in its own mind with its imaginative power. We read newspaper every day. Various incidents happen in front of our eyes, or we get to hear it from TV, newspaper, and other media. Now, we say that is real. Yes, factually, that is real. Facts are real to the extent that they last. But what is a fancy? What my mind imagines after reading the incident in the newspaper or watching the TV incident or even watching the movie is a fancy imagination, because when my mind is preoccupied with its own thoughts, what is the mind? Mind is just a series of thoughts coming one after another in quick succession. Psychologists say the human mind, on an average, generates 20,000 to about 40 to 50,000 thoughts every day. So the mind is a thought generating machine. When the mind generates so many thoughts, it's preoccupied with so many thoughts. Can we recognize the situation as it is? Or when we read a news item, or when we listen or watch a news item on the TV, does our mind create its own reality about what it has seen and heard? Now, when our mind is not quiet, when our mind is preoccupied with its own thoughts, a series of thoughts, then it creates its own world around the thing. It starts seeing what it has seen and heard as it wants to see, not as it is. And this is the problem. The reactive world the response world. Now, the events are the same. When any two events happen in quick succession and we are able to relate it to each other, then we call it cause and effect. When one event follows another as a logical consequence and we are able to ascribe a reason for it, we call it cause and effect. If we can't imagine a cause for it, what will we say? Our mind will put a label that it is a coincidence. Now, if the next successive event happens randomly, not according to what we have planned, then what will the mind label it as? An accident. So events happen in quick succession, one after another. I leave my home in my vehicle in the car to go to the office or the customer's place, and I will reach the customer's place at a certain time. So along the way, successive events happen. Now, if I'm able to reach the customer's place or the destination as per what I have planned, I will say it is a cause and effect relationship. Now, suppose along the way, unplanned, the my car tire gets punctured, then I'll term it as accident. Now, suppose I'm going. I left home, but my Ola or Uber didn't come on time, and it cancelled, and I got my friend. I met a friend who was going to the same place where I am going. Then I'll call it coincidence, because I had not thought of my friend. I thought of going by Ola or Uber. So you see, events happen in quick succession in the objective world, one after another. But the way the mind sees it is dependent on its own point of view. Therefore, no event by itself is a cause and an effect, or a coincidence, or an accident, except as much as, or except as much as the way in which the mind sees it. So who is the culprit here? Is it the event? Is it the nature's forces that cause the event, that put the event together? Or is it the mind that has interpreted that event? The same event may be interpreted by different people in different ways. Therefore, we need to find out if we are really living, if we are merely looking at facts, or we are imagining things from the fact that we sense, perceive. Another simple example is, I like a certain type of music, say Carnatic or Hindustani or any other form of music. Now, if some other different type of music falls on my ear, then I will simply, my mind will dismiss it as jarring, because I don't like it. Therefore, the mind has a very large role to play in the way we it responds, it is able to see things. And that's why all masters have said to see things as they are requires a quiet mind and a pure mind. That means the mind must be quiet, must have a single thought that it's able to direct on the event, and it must also be pure. That means it must not carry the baggage of the past experience. That means it must not decide in advance that this event is good or bad. Only then can there be an intelligent response to the world that we live in. Otherwise, it is a calculated or a mindset driven response that that is undertaken for the benefit of my own self. Hmm? So facts are never the problem. It is the fancy trip that the mind takes that is the problem, because the fact is right in front of us, but the mind starts imagining something else out of it. And therefore, then comes the contradiction between what is in front of us and what the mind imagines. And Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, contradiction is the mark of the false. Reality never contradicts itself. Therefore, who is the one that is contradicting? The little me contradicts one thing after another. And it will sometimes even dismiss consciousness or the source from which the little me came as an imagination, that it doesn't exist, isn't it? Therefore, we have to be, mind is a very powerful tool, and it has an enormous power of imagination. Now, how does this imagination take place? How does this how did this imagination originate? In fact, it originates every minute. We have three different states that we go through every day: deep sleep, dream, and waking. Now, in deep sleep, the ego or the mind is unmanifest. That means it's completely merged. What is the experience of deep sleep? Everyone's experience of deep sleep is total blankness. In fact, all the pains in the body, all the aches and pains in the body, all the turmoils in the mind, all of them vanish the moment I enter into a state of sleep. Why? Because when the ego is unmanifest, the body consciousness is absent. That means there is no sense of I am the body. That's a very, very happy state to be in, because where is all the pain, where is all the conflict? It is only in the body and mind. Now, in deep sleep, what happens? Um, Neither the body consciousness or the mind consciousness is present. So you're in a state of complete bliss where there are no problems. There is the whole being is homogeneous. It is unsplit. It is one whole. Therefore, there is no contradiction. There is no thought arising. There are no sensations and perceptions. And deep sleep, that's why, is a highly blissful state. What about the dream then? Dream, the ego is half manifest. That means the body consciousness is partial. The mind starts imagining the dream, creates a dream world, and starts seeing the dream in the mind. How do we say the body consciousness is partial? We are aware, the mind is aware that it is dreaming, and it is also when something happens, when a tiger chases me, my character in the dream, I start running and my body sweats, isn't it? So, because of the emotions that I go through in the dream, it also impacts the body. Here, physical body when it is lying on the bed, and therefore it's partially aware of the body. And in the waking state, the ego is fully manifest and the body consciousness is full. That means I proudly say that I am this body. I did this work. When I did this work, who did the work? My body did the work. So I identify with the body 100% fully. So body consciousness is full in the waking state. Body consciousness is half or partial in the dream state, and body consciousness is completely absent or zero in the deep sleep state. Now, when is the manifested world created? When does the manifested world come into picture? Obviously, it comes when I wake up first thing in the morning. When I am sleeping, where is the world as an experience? Since there is no experience of the body, there is no experience of the world at all in sleep. There is subtle experience of the body, there is experience of the subtle body, and therefore there is experience of the subtle world in dream. There is experience of the gross body, and therefore there is experience of the gross world in the waking state. So, the world that we experience is whether I am fully body conscious or partially body conscious or without any body consciousness. Isn't it? Isn't that a logical thing to say? Hmm? So the world arises with the body and the world disappears with the body, not only upon death, but every day. Every day. Hmm? So, how did this power of imagination come by? Now, when the mind is present, now the mind has the ego, or the mind has can associate with one thing or the other. It has two associations. Would you like to share what your thoughts are? What are the two associations? Anyone?
ego or the soul, or ego or the higher self.
Okay. Ego associates with the soul. Okay. Wonderful. And the second association,
Is ego associates with ego or body or I consciousness.
body. Yeah. Ego associates with the body. Thank you, Jankiram. Wonderful. So actually, the ego can there are twin associations of the ego. One is the one that takes it outward, and the other is that provides an experience inward, inside. Now, when the ego associates with the body, since the mind and the body gets activated, the sense organs are active by the association of the mind with the body. Now, what will happen? The mind will then start imagining the objects in the world. So, the perception of gross objects is actually an imagination because of the association of the ego with the gross body. Now, look at it the other way. When the ego associates with the reflected, identifies with the reflected consciousness, the pure consciousness is untouched. It cannot be touched. So, what can be grasped is the reflected consciousness. In Vedantic terms, it is called Chidabhasa, the consciousness that reflects in the human intellect. A typical example that is given is the sun, the sunlight that reflects in different parts of water. Now, when the reflection happens, when the reflection of consciousness happens in the intellect, mind, and the body gets enlivened because of the power of consciousness, proximity, and therefore the power of consciousness. And the mind then gets the power of imagination. Now, when ego associates with the reflected consciousness, it starts imagining ideas about itself and therefore leads to thoughts, feelings, and emotions inside. So, one is the gross world and the other is the subtle world. Is there a difference between the gross world and the subtle world in its essence, in the way the sages have looked at it? Isn't this true? When for example, when do I know that I am in the house, in my bedroom? Only when I wake up. And what is the waking state? An association of the ego with the body, isn't it? And what is my thinking, feeling, and emotions? It is a product of association of the ego with the reflected consciousness. Because the mind gets enlivened, it starts imagining objects or ideas about itself. Again, because the mind gets enlivened and it's focused outside, it starts imagining objects in the outer world. So if we see, essentially, in a sense, both the external world, which is the world of gross objects, and the ideas about myself, which is driven by my thoughts, my feelings, and my emotions, both are imaginations. Both are a product of imagination. When we look at it from this perspective, both the external world and the thoughts, feelings, and emotions, the ideas about who I think I am, which is the little me, I am this body, I am an engineer, I am a trainer, I am a speaker, all the ideas about me and what I perceive gross objects in imagine and anything that I perceive to the sense organs, both are both are products of imagination. They are not real. And what does Vedanta say about it, about this unreality? They don't say it is false. They say it is mithya. It is unreal because it is not there, it is not ever present. Sometimes the mind is outward focused and it senses gross objects. Sometimes the mind is inward focused, it generates ideas about the little fellow, the little person, little personality. And sometimes the mind goes to sleep, as in deep sleep, and all ideas about oneself and the world is completely put to rest. Put to rest. Now let us see, is there any reality to these two? Not really, isn't it? Therefore, the my world, the world that is spun around the little self, little me, this person, whether it's the external world of gross objects or the internal world of ideas about my own self as to what I am, both are spun out of the imaginative power of the mind. What does Drisya Viveka say? Drisya Viveka clearly says what we just discussed. In the 10th and 11th shloka, Drisya Viveka says that in the deep sleep state, suptau, in the deep sleep state, ahankara laye, the ego is dormant. Laya is to be dormant. And therefore, when the ego is dormant, what is the result? Bhave dehopya achetanaha. That means deha api, even the body then therefore is achetana, is devoid of consciousness. Not devoid of consciousness. I don't have the recognition of the body. So when the ego is dormant, body consciousness is absent. When ego is half present or half sprouted, as in the dream, ahankara vikarardha swapnaha, as in dream, when it is half present, ego is half present, sarvastu jagaraha, it is fully present, it's fully manifest in the waking state. In the waking state, the ego is fully body conscious. In the dream state, it is partially body conscious. In the deep sleep state, it is unconscious of the body. Why? Because of the unmanifested state of the ego in deep sleep, because of the half manifestation of the ego in dream, and because of the full manifestation of the ego in waking state. So everything, the ego is on a trip. It manifests partially, fully, and goes to sleep, unmanifests. So every day it is going on a trip. And therefore, every day we have all these three experiences throughout our life. All right. And the 11th shloka also talks about, Indrik Trishya Viveka talks about the same thing that we discussed. Antahkarana vrittischa. That means antahkarana, the inner organ or the subtle body, which itself is a modification of thoughts. Chitchaya maikyamagata. That because of the proximity or identification with the reflection, chitchaya, reflected consciousness, vasana kalpayet swapno. That means when it starts imagining its tendencies or thoughts, it gets into a dream state, and then when it when it focuses both bodhe akshair vishayan bahihi, when it identifies with the sense organs, akshay is a sense organ, aksha. When it identifies with the sense organ or the body, when it enlivens the sense organs or the body, it imagines objects in the external world. All the same, both are imaginations. Now, an important thing here. The, we are talking about the three states: deep sleep, dreaming, and waking. Are there three states actually? Is deep sleep a state? Typically, when there is no experience, as in sleep, then it's completely homogeneous. There is nothing to interrupt the experience of no experience, blankness. There is nothing to interrupt the blankness in sleep. Now, when everything is blank, is it a state? Is it really a state? Isn't it the foundation of the very existence of all the states? Now, let's look at the other two states. Now, we are awake for about 16 hours. So I've just divided the three states into three equal parts for the purposes of representation. In actuality, waking state is a little more, isn't it? And deep sleep is a little less. But anyway, so if we consider waking state, where there are positive experiences, positive experience means experience of the sense organs happening every minute, then there is the dream state, which is another part of the day where the subtle body is active and uses the power of imagination in the dream and spins a dreaming world. Now, with respect to the waking and dreaming, sleep seems to appear as a state. Now, in waking, I perceive the gross objects. I can sense it through my sense organs. In dream, I can feel or I can think of the subtle objects, which is in the mind, thoughts, feelings, and emotions of the mind. Even the places I go to in the dream are only in the mind, isn't it? If I go from, if I travel from India to US in the dream, it's still the mental world. The- If I'm driving a car in the dream, it's a dream car. It's not a real car. So I'm aware of the subtle objects, all a product of thoughts. In sleep, I'm not aware of anything, and therefore, the common experience of everyone, every human being in the world is in sleep, there is no experience or there is blankness. No experience is the experience of blankness. That means there are no objects to interrupt the space and no thoughts to interrupt time in sleep, because there is no space, no time, only and only in deep sleep. In waking state, there is the physical space and this physical time. In the dream state, there is the subtle space, the mental space, and the thought time, the emotional time, psychological time. That's why within a few minutes, I can travel from one continent to another in a dream. Whereas in a waking state, it will take a day at least to go from one side of the earth to the other. Now, look at the deep sleep state by itself. Is it split? Is it split into one third of the segment? It appears to be there as one third, isn't it? But really, what is the waking state? Waking state is a superimposition on the deep sleep state. That means I am in deep sleep when I have no experience. I'm sleeping on the bed, and suddenly my sense organs get active and I wake up. So, where is the waking state? It is it is in the deep sleep state. It arises from the deep sleep state. Similarly, dreaming is also a superimposition. How do we get this? Look at the white background of the deep sleep, which is transparent. Is that transparent background the background of no experience? Is it not there behind the waking state? Is that no experience state not there behind the dreaming state? It is there. The white background, the colorless background of the deep sleep is there in the other two states, but because of the superimposition of waking and dreaming, it has receded to the background. Therefore, sleep is not a state. It is present in and through the other two states as well. Sleep is our natural characteristic. One other way of looking at it, let's do a quick exercise. Now, just be aware of your own true nature at the center of your heart. Take your attention to the center of your being. That means the thoughts subside, emotions subside. When you close your eyes, even the external objects subside. Do we now have a no experience state right when we are awake? It is possible. So, when the ego touches its being, whether even in the waking state, it can be in a sleep like state. When the mind, dreaming mind, touches its being, it can be in a sleep like state even while it is dreaming. Therefore, if it has to be in the sleep like state when it is waking, the sleep must be present in the waking state. The nature of sleep must also be present in the dream state. Only then we can experience sleep while we are awake. Sleep like experience while we are awake. In spite of all the tremendous urge to think, to feel, to perceive, just take a few deep breaths and take the attention to the center of the being. When we touch the core of the being, all experiences subside. When all experiences subside, isn't it waking sleep? So, therefore, sleep is not a state. It appears like a state in relation to, from the point of view of the waker and the dreamer. Otherwise, sleep is sleep. In sleep, sleep is in waking, and sleep is also in dreaming. And this is Brahman. A sample of Brahman everyday experience we have in deep sleep. Now, if we are able to, and if we are able to bring forth the sleep-like state in the waking state, that is realization. So, why are we saying this? Brahman, I, was never lost. It is there in waking, it is there in dreaming, it is there in the world, it is there in no world. We don't have to run away from the world to realize Brahman. In fact, Advaita Vedanta actually inspires and urges every one of us not to go in for special states or special experiences, to realize our true nature in the natural states that we are in everyday life. So, who has lost whom? Has the ego lost I, the consciousness? Or ego has lost itself in the trip, in its trip to the external world and to its own internal world, both in the world of imagination? We will realize that the ego has lost itself in its own world of imagination. Nothing ever has happened to I, the consciousness. It was there prior to waking. It is there during waking. It is there prior to dreaming, it is there during the dream also. The ability to recognize and cognize that is while we are awake or while we are in dream is realization. And we can take the help of spiritual texts as pointers to know our true nature. That points to our true nature. And so the start of all conflicts, the split between I and me, that which is the whole is split into two and multiple parts. That is the work of imagination. And one such imagination, part, one way of imagining is the power of Maya or ignorance. Out of ignorance, I imagine myself to be something other than who I truly am. I would like to offer this understanding to my teacher, Sri Prabhuji, and to all the realized masters. My gratitude to Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, Sri Prabhuji, and Ramana Maharshi, and to all the realized masters. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you very much for your patient listening.